We've started. There we go.
Recording in
And
progress.
recording.
Do I have to deliver this in an American accent?
Yes, please.
Hey guys.
That would be more entertaining still.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll without much talking any longer from me, I'll hand you over to our first speaker, Clive Hilton. He is an associate lecturer as well as the central staff, and he will then hand over to the other panelists. I call you panelists. Lovely ALs who are going to talk as well about their experiences with portfolios. So please, Clive, take over.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I'm not going to kind of rattle on about myself because that dull as ditch water, but I have, I think, three little kind of presentations. They're all a bit different. One's a video, one's a PowerPoint presentation, and one is a report. And these are kind of portfolio. They're variation on a portfolio theme that my former students produced when I was course director of a postgraduate design program at Coventry. And I will stress here and now is that I got permission to do this, yonks ago. You kind of, yeah, do anything you like. So there you go. So it'll probably involve me doing 3 separate shares because I don't think Zoom is capable of just whipping from window to window. So here's the first one, team. Cool. So I'm hoping you can see that. U101 portfolio design. Yeah, great. Okay. Yeah. I'm not brave enough to go full screen. I've had disasters that way. So let's just launch into it. So what is a design portfolio? Good question. Glad you asked. In the world of professional, the professional design professions, a design portfolio, I'm reading it, you can read it as well, is a design artifact. Could be physical, the old idea of a physical portfolio in a case you carry around loads of paper. These days, frankly, mostly digital. But the key thing about a portfolio is what it demonstrates to any potential employer is, the degree to which you can deliver your design skills at a professional level. So the expectation is, given a project, you can deliver it, you can coordinate, you can come up with brilliant ideas, and you can represent them, and you can communicate with others, and then manifest that in the form of a portfolio that shows how you're doing it. Portfolios can be based on a single project. You just have a single project and you develop a portfolio that shows how that project was delivered. More usually for students and for professionals who are looking to move on is what you do is you collect a bundle of work that you've done over your career and you present a synthesis of that. Frankly, that is the most common thing. But the nature of what a portfolio is kind of changing all the time. It's up for grabs. It can be a presentation, PowerPoint, it can be PDF, it can be video, it can be a blog, it can be anything. So we're going to have a look at some of these things. It should be said in our world of online everything is no surprise, is that, there are portfolio sites, that is to say, sites that host portfolios, and there are sites in which you can create portfolios, and then there are sites which will give you guidance on how to create a winning portfolio. And so I've listed some of these here. So what I can do after this event is over is I can circulate this and send it to you for those that are interested. So no need to struggle trying to copy these things down. Some guidance, team, some guidance. I've tried to synthesize a whole ton of advice I generally give to students, but the number one piece of advice is this, is only put work in your portfolio that is of the highest quality that you can generate. The reality is of the human condition is if you've got 9 brilliant bits of work and then you put 1 weak bit of work in, that's what people will pick up on. So it's amazing how, a single piece of weak work can undermine all the great stuff that's in there. And what it does in the mind of employers is it kind of says, why is that in there? Why didn't he take it out? Idiot. You see, so only put good quality work in there because nobody knows actually what you do choose to leave out. You can make a portfolio as a synthesis from more complex documents like project reports, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute. Generally speaking, within the context of what you're being asked to do, keep it simple, really. Sometimes it has to be complicated, you know, when you're presenting to a client and you have to justify your design based on a ton of research, it's complicated. But ultimately, you know, the best way to get your ideas across, generally speaking, is keep it simple, keep it clean, and keep it impactful. In other words, make it memorable. People talk about you because they remember some powerful piece of work you put in your portfolio. The image here is an example of what's called a hero shot. So the idea with hero shots is some way they make an emotional connection. You know, you grab people's attention in some powerfully graphic way, and then armed with that, their curiosity is piqued and they're more content to look further into your portfolio, especially if you're sending it to agencies, you know, blind, as it were. You're just sending these things out and inviting a response. And then across the portfolio, my last piece of advice is, you know, balance the emotional content with a good selection of images of design development and research that have helped lead you towards the solutions that you found. Okay, so what we're going to look at in a minute are other portfolio examples. And the first one is actually a project report, a single project. This is from a postgraduate student's final major project. And these projects are also substantiated by significant research. Another one is a live client project to design a domestic kidney dialysis machine, and that is in the form of a PowerPoint presentation. And then the final thing is a piece of product design that builds on work in partnership with the Bugatti Trust to design a coffee machine that has, if you like, the brand values associated with the Bugatti brand. Yay. So I'm just going to stop that and do a new share. Okie dokie. This one. Okie dokie. So enable content. So this was a live project we did with a company called Quanta, and the idea was to design a domestic dialysis machine. For reasons of simplicity, really. Existing dialysis machines, I don't know if you know, but they're huge objects. And the idea behind this is the client wanted to design a machine, who wanted our students to design a machine that could be portable. So enabling, you know, kidney patients to go on holiday, for example, they could pack this up in the boot. So any project as significant as this requires a ton of research. And so this was a team collaborative effort. Students did a load of teamwork based research activities, some on the technologies, some on lifestyle, some on user needs, some on transportability. And collectively, they started formulating ideas for form and then began the process of prototyping and developing a full-size mock-up in cardboard using simple materials. And then that led to the development of a CAD model, complete with internal workings, visualizations that were presented to the client, and then a kind of finally ending up with user scenarios of lifestyle. You know, so the dialysis machine there is set in a variety of environments, hospital, hotels, and in the final image here, dialysis machines being packed up so the patient can go on holiday. Yay, good, eh? So kind of that one. And I'm going to share the final presentation. Share sound. Yep, that's good. Boom. Oops. Yeah, sorry about that. It was running on in the background. So there you go. It's 3 different ways of considering what a portfolio might be. Some based on individual projects, some collaborative and some solo. And all of them kind of have their role in the world of professional design. And it is true to say, I think that the use of videos is becoming more and more central to, the way professional designers promote their work, especially among design students. Because if one thinks about it, among the great advantages it has is its capacity to deliver a narrative without language. And, so it can be understood. It's across national differences and national languages that let the images tell the story. Good. So on that, kind of me done. I can't remember who's next.
Let's hand over to Laura. Laura's next, yay!
Who happens to be sitting next to me on the screen. Oh, yeah, so there you go.
Laura, I'm sure you will introduce yourself. Thank you so much, Clive. That was really interesting.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. And give us a thumbs up if you can see me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I can see you, Laura.
Thank you. So my name's Laura, and I'm also a user experience designer at the BBC. I've been working there for about 7 or 8 years, but I've been working as a UX designer for about 17 years now.
Whoa.
I know. Anyway, so kind of like my job is to make sure that all the interactive experiences that we design are designed for the people who are using them, and also that the experience is just super intuitive and inclusive and accessible. I think the most important thing about a UX design portfolio is that you need to show your design thinking process and also show how you've understood your customers or your users' needs, and also your ability to solve problems creatively. So with each project, I tend to first identify the skills that I want to show off, and then I try and make sure that I'm weaving those skills into the story. So it's not about the shiny thing at the end as much as kind of how you got there and what you've learned. So I'm going to show you 2 or maybe 3, well, depending on the time, three projects. Now this particular portfolio I'm going to show you is more for like an interview. So that's a little bit different to my online portfolio. So my online portfolio would go into a lot more detail. It would probably read more like a blog. Whereas this, I'm kind of condensing everything. So if I just go straight into it. Okay. So this first project is called Bite-Sized Daily Lessons, and it was the BBC's emergency response to the school shutting down in the pandemic. So before I started, I identified the skills I wanted to show off in the project. So it's things like communication skills and working under kind of extreme conditions. I find a portfolio, or even the thought of creating a portfolio is really daunting. So I kind of feel like it helped me to follow a structure. So I always start with the context and then any challenges the project presented. And then the most important bit about how I went around understanding the problem space and what my approach was, and then the outcome. So hopefully you'll be able to see that being weaved into this, this project. So this first slide is a brief summary of the project, and most importantly, what my job was. So, you know, for our job isn't really to create a website or design a button. it's what's the purpose of the thing you're designing? You know, what problem is it that you're trying to solve? So in my case, we've got this new kind of proposition of daily lessons, and my job was to make the experience of getting to the new content as intuitive as possible. And then, of course, I'm tying in all the imagery to represent that kind of sequence of events. You know, we got that big announcement, the schools were closing, and then we were working at home. Cats were sitting on our keyboards. You know, it was all wanted a visual way of showing those sort of personal challenges. And then this slide again is just to show how I've reframed that problem. So as designers, we often get kind of, you know, oh, design a website, blah, blah, blah. But this, how my we statement, and you'll be familiar with those on New 101, our audience ages ranged from about 4 to 16. So making sure that the content was relevant was the real challenge for this problem that we were trying to address. And also that siblings were sharing devices as well, which was another problem. And then go on to the challenges. It can feel a bit dry, but what I'm trying to get across here is that I wanted to show that I've proven resilience and worked under pressure. And again, this image communicates that sort of challenge. And this is probably the most important slide, even though it's not particularly exciting, but again, it's about the process that I went through to fully understand the problem that we're designing for, and also fully understand our users. You know, we all know the design process is very messy, and the more you dig in, the more you start to uncover stuff and gathering insights along the way. So make sure you demonstrate that the skills and the methods that you are using to understand the problem and your users. So for this slide, I really wanted to show that I've been using both qualitative and quantitative methods, and also wanted to really show that I'm working with data. Again, if this was a portfolio, a website portfolio, I think this would be much more detailed, but I'm able to talk through it when I'm in an interview. And I suppose from a UX portfolio anyway, being collaborative is a really important skill. So I wanted to call this out on a separate slide. Moving on quickly, finally, we get to the actual design work. So everything up to this point has been really to kind of communicate how we've got to this final design. And this is actually what we went live with. So here, I want to show off the design, and I would talk about the branding. But the main thing, the story that I'm trying to tell, is that because we couldn't use normal methods for testing these designs on our users because of the pandemic, we were going to start with a solution that was very simple, which is actually this little start a lesson button here. Get it live and then start getting the data back. And then we would decide on whether or not we would go on to the next phase. So it was a really kind of a phased iterative approach. And again, calling out that data. And then again, phase 2, and calling out that data. So the next phase, we've just included this year drop down, And again, going back to the original problem about relevancy and siblings using different year groups, which is why we chose this solution. And then finally, showing off the final iteration, which was around personalisation and repeat visits. And also this slide just wanting to show that the design across all the different devices. And then finally, I think it's really important to show the outcome and what effect your design solution had. You know, whether that's business goal or fulfilling an audience need. It's important to kind of go back to that original problem that you were trying to solve at the beginning and show how your solution, what the impact was or how you're going to measure it. I'll just move on to the next one really quickly. Oh, and everybody loves a quote. If you can get a quote in there, then it's always a good thing. This one, I wanted to demo this project because this didn't go live, and you know, it's just to show that you don't have to have lots of live stuff in there. You know, you might have projects that is just a response to a really open brief. This was like the brief was, it was horrific really. It was pick a BBC product, design something that solves a problem for a metric you want to change. Now that for me is scares the living daylights out of me. But again, it's more about the process and how you would respond to a brief like this. So for this sort of project, again, it's showing my design thinking process, but also I wanted to call out some prototyping skills as well. So if I'll whiz through quite quickly to get to the end, but again, it's all about upfront, that research. This was developing a set of questions right at the beginning that I wanted to answer. And then showing that process of converging and honing in on areas of interest, and then reframing those insights as problem statements. And then again, honing in on an idea. I'm still not quite certain what it is I'm actually wanting to do at this point, but I'm kind of getting there and I'm wanting to show that process. And so I knew that there was, I wanted to do something around young audiences being underserved. And I thought that there was, we already had a loyal fan base in Match of the Day, and maybe there was something in that I could build on. So then, let's see, and again, it's still around the process and showing how we're kind of focusing on an idea. So I've used this how might we statement, but wanted to show that we then did some ideation techniques. This particular one is called Crazy Eights, but it was just to show that we had a bit of a creative session to come up with some ideas. And then finally, we're coming up with a hypothesis. Again, it's just basically an assumption, something that you believe to be true. And this then formed an idea for a proposed solution. And finally, we get to the solution, which is around everything football, which is a place to soak up and consume everything football from across the BBC and the social channels. Now, it didn't really matter what the solution was here as much. It was more, again, about my response to that process. So, oh, and I suppose I ought to quickly show the then I also wanted to show some prototyping skills as well. So I mocked this one up really quickly, and it's all existing content as well. So it wasn't very difficult to do, but it was just a good way of showing off some of those skills that I kind of thought would be needed in this particular job interview. And again, I'll just pause that. Finally, although this didn't go live, and it's still important to say, well, what's next? So we could say that I wanted to do some usability testing and what it would, what I would want to have done. How are we doing for time? Are we all right to quickly zoom through one more, or shall I?
No, we probably have to move on. Although my heart
No,
bleeds.
that's absolutely fine.
Maybe we come back if there are no questions at the end, which I can't promise. Then we can come back and look at the third one as well. I'd like to know. Laura, oh, that was so good. Okay, I get you on the third one. I do.
Nick, there's one question in the chat.
I was hoping to answer the questions at the end, but I mean, Laura,
okay.
do you want to take that one? It's about starting out as a UX designer. Do you recommend creating a portfolio of projects from dummy briefs, or is it better to reach out to businesses and charities? Alex, if you want to comment on that, please be free to phrase it the way you would like to.
Can answer that if you want me to. Should I
Sorry,
do
you mean like on the microphone or like so basically like for like portfolio projects, would it be better to like come up with your own brief and then try and work to that, or to like find an existing company who might need design work done?
I think that's a really good question. I think either or, really. I think if you can come up with your own brief, but also reaching out to a design agency or to get an actual brief, it would be a really good idea anyway. I'm sure the projects that you'll be doing as well, like that one that I showed before, it wasn't a real brief at all. It was just something like you can join hack days as well, and just start it from there, and just keep thinking it's your process for UX anyway.
Thank you. Cheers.
That's lovely. Okay, let's move on to John. We have still loads of time, I hope, for more questions later on. John, do you want to quickly take us through? Yeah, lovely. Thank you so much.
Can you see my screen now, folks?
Yes, very good.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm taking a kind of a helicopter view from a kind of design engineer's viewpoint in terms of a portfolio. I'm looking at it in terms of considering this idea of a journey versus just the destination. Because sometimes we get thinking that our customer is only interested in the finished product. But in academia, that is not the case. We need to show everything we've done, prove the journey, and then show the destination. A typical example of that is TMA1 in U101, where we have the t-shirt problem. Phase 1 is worth 30 marks, phase 2 is worth 30 marks, phase 3 is worth 30 marks, and the last phase, the review, is 10% of the marks. But there's only one phase where there's an actual product, and that's the t-shirt, and that's only worth 30% of the marks. So the rest of it is wrapped up in the journey and some of the other things that we do, and that's really important. And I think we should kind of embed that in our mind. Think journey versus destination whenever we involving ourselves in these portfolio designs that we're building. Portfolios, by the way, they've been around for years. When I was a design engineering apprentice, we used to have a thing called a logbook, and anyone that's going to be studying T192, they'll come across a thing called the learning log, and we used to have to fill one of those in every week, and we used to have to show the things we designed, how we'd implemented it in the factory, on the shop floor, and then we have to prove that then to our engineering managers. So they've been around a long time. So the overview for this, from my point of view, is that we should start out with a brief introduction that summarizes the purpose of the portfolio and the type of work that we're going to include. So be very clear about that, so that the prospective employer will understand exactly where we're coming from. And in some ways, we can treat the employer as if they don't know too much about the product or service that we're talking about. So for design projects, then we can include a variety of projects that showcase the design skills that we have. These can be CAD models, technical drawings. 3D printed prototypes are becoming more and more accessible. Now you can pick up 3D printers for a song these days, and these can really help you enhance the work that you do. And Clive has already talked to us about that not all portfolios are just electronic books, if you like. They can be other things. There are other artifacts that we can collect and display. We can take them along to the interview, and there's lots of things we can do to impress the employer. And we live, you students out there, we live in a fantastic age. We have got so many tools that we can use to make ourselves look brilliant. Remember that we can make ourselves look brilliant by using these tools. So use them and make sure that they get some sort of sight in that portfolio of yours. Be sure to highlight key decisions, design decisions that you made, and explain how your design solves a particular problem or meets a specific goal. The employer will be very interested in how you thought about that and how you got through to the point where you've got this design idea. Things like engineering calculations. Some types of design, you don't have to do a lot of this, but certainly in engineering design, calculations and maths and that type of thing will be at the forefront of your game, really. So make sure that you understand the calculations. And certainly if you're going to be a prospective bridge designer, you really will need to understand those calculations, because there's an awful lot of cars that are going to be weighing in on that, and it's down to you to get that right. Nowadays, of course, we've got other tools that help us. AutoCAD can help us to put together good designs and 3D models, but also there's lots of plugins available now for AutoCAD where it can sort out the size of an RSJ that you might be planning on using. It can sort out the sizes and the structure of that. When you're using high tensile bolts, for example, it can be sorting out the size of bolt you need and all the tensions that you need to be using there. So lots of tools, and it's our job to, over the years, because this takes many years, this isn't something you're just going to jump into. Over the years, we will get better at doing these things. Provide detailed explanations of your methodology and your assumptions. Assumptions are always important, because when we're presenting our portfolio, these people that we're presenting to need to know where we're coming from. Why did we assume this? So always make that crystal clear from the outset. Working with others. Some of us absolutely hate working with others. Employers, however, would kind of like it if we were good at working with others. So please, even on your course, if you don't like working with others, and I'm thinking now in terms of maybe U101, TMA2, where you have to get together with members of your family, colleagues, etc., and you have to get around the table and work on some design ideas. You may have hated that, but get used to it, because you're going to get a lot more of it when you get into your full-time roles. So team projects, if you've worked on team projects, include samples in there as well, because you can then kind of walk on the shoulders of giants when you're doing that, because you may be working with people there that are really skilled in certain areas, and you can kind of lean on that and push that into your portfolio as well, and show how, you know, you are good at working with others, because employers will be looking for that. When you're talking about the team role that you've been involved with, always reflect on that, and maybe go to some of the team roles that you've come across and start thinking about the ones in a team that you were particularly good at. So, you know, if you're an innovator, then, you know, that might be part of the way you present yourself with this. Professional development is always key because employers via this portfolio would like to know, are you keen on keeping up? Because if you're the type that says, oh, I don't want to go on courses, I'd rather just sit in the office and work on a CAD system, that's okay. But an employer would really like it if they're ready to roll your sleeves up and say, oh, I'll attend that AutoCAD update program. I'll do that, and I'll feed back to the team as well. And if you've done stuff like that, let them know, put it in your portfolio. It's really important because they like that sort of stuff. Presentation skills. You will have learned a lot about presentation while you're on your courses with the OU, and the OU we have fantastic materials that you can use in order to make you better at this as well. So always important, always listen to the PT3 comments when they come back in terms of how you presented your work, because you will find that useful in some future day. Try and get used to doing some presentations as well, because we don't always get the opportunity of presenting, but if there's an opportunity to present something, then put your hand up and give yourself that experience. It'll put you on the edge a little bit, but you'll feel a lot better after you've done it. Don't be afraid to address challenges. We always say on these courses, you know, what went well, but what didn't go so well. And sometimes students back off and think, oh, if I say it didn't go that well, then I'm going to lose marks. You don't lose marks. You just show your employer that you're honest. And that's what they're after. They want to know, you know, did things go wrong? If they did, what did you do about it? And how did that turn out? So it's always important to kind of do that as well, and do it well. Other work is important as well. So if you've done a question came up earlier, didn't it, for Laura from Alex, I believe, about should I include work from an employer, a proper job that I've done, or should I have done some volunteer work and included that? Well, it's great, because if you can include some volunteer stuff as well, because you didn't have an employer at the time, then that's brilliant. It does show initiative on your part, and it shows the employer that you're a bit more go-getter than perhaps the next person. So it's really important there to kind of think about volunteer work and other things that you may have done. Always remember that the goal of a design engineering portfolio is to demonstrate your skills and abilities as an engineer. Be sure to provide detailed explanations and highlight your contributions to each project or activity. I didn't put this on the slide, but don't tell lies, don't fudge it. Because in an interview situation with this portfolio sitting in front of you, and they start asking you about these high tensile bolts that you used, and why did you use them, and why that size, then you may come unstuck. So only put in there the things that you can rely on in court, if you like. I've mentioned there the learning log, and I've already spoken about that. Last important, journey versus destination. If you forget anything else about what I've said tonight, just think journey versus destination in all the things that you do. Destination is important. It's the product that the customer sees, but in things like academia, business settings, portfolios for prospective employers, it's the journey that people like to see as well. So, you know, TMAs, evidence, and more evidence, and that will give us success. Thank you very much. And sorry I had to go a bit speedy, but Nicole's on the timer there. Thank you.
I am on the timer, but that was fantastic, amazing. Thank you so much, John.
Okay.
All right, so we have the final one. Mike, are you with us still?
I'm with you.
Yay! And then keep all your questions handy. We will get back to you and want questions. Okay, first to Mike. Please introduce yourself.
Hopefully you can see this.
All
So
good.
my approach is going to be very much talking about my illustration work, which I've done alongside my teaching. So I teach at the OU, obviously, but I also teach at various universities. So I'm teaching graphic design and multimedia processes. So what I wanted to do is talk through, a bit like Clive says, it's a snapshot of the work that I've done. But the one thing that I wanted to talk about as a portfolio, or building a portfolio, is like telling a story, or telling a story about how your work evolves. and where it goes and how it sort of develops in different ways when you're responding to clients' work. And also showing work in context as well. So it's particularly with the work that I do, because it's very much image based. So I'm making images, very personal images. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off and sort of give a bit of an explanation of where did I start and how did I start as an illustrator, because originally I was doing everything by hand. I was hand painting it. That was my sort of process. And I was doing a lot of package design, book design, and I got a bit bored with that because it's just like painting with numbers. And then I started to play with Photoshop. And this was a huge revelation, because you could, because of the nature of the work that you were doing with a client, you were always banging it backwards and forwards between you and the designer. And doing that by hand was never possible. But when Photoshop came along, you sort of could take risks and you could mix and match things. And I started to play with a lot with textures and photographs and bringing lots of things back together again. So it was a real revelation. And this is some of the work. This was an early piece, but this piece and this piece were really quite key in developing a completely new style. So I was working as an illustrator, but I sort of took risks. And I suppose this, going back to this question about getting started, is you have to take risks, because you're going to get picked up because you'll stand out from somebody else. So taking risks, and also putting pieces in when you're building a portfolio, is put pieces in that may not be commissions. They might not be work that you've done, but you might, or work that you think you're working towards a commission, but it could be something that you think, okay, I really like that one, I'll put that one in. And I put these two in, and these were the commissions that they developed a lot of commissions. They developed a lot of things. Could never really pin down why, but everybody sort of responded it to. So those were early sort of development pieces. And all these were done in Photoshop. And this sort of led to doing work for New Scientist. And one thing I wanted to sort of show is that it's important to show the work in context. So if you're showing illustration, because this is how it actually turned out, but that's the original. This is what I developed. This is what I designed. So when you show work, it's sort of quite important to show it as a context of how people can actually see how your work fits a particular layout or design, or where the typography can fit and how it fits around everything. And so with a portfolio, it's always a good idea to sort of show the original and show the sort of the final piece of work that you were actually commissioned to do. So this one was obviously for the New Scientist, and that was the original. And this was all about liquid memory, how we retain memories and how we work with memories. I was working a lot with sort of obviously photographs and textures, and this is a lot of what I was working with. So sort of experimentation. So so this is also showing in a portfolio, so showing diversity. So that was a magazine. This was a book cover or book inside for a book. This was about Shakespeare Sonnets. This was for Oxford University Press, I think. So again, this is how it would be laid out. This is how the text integrates. So again, it's showing the work in context and how it actually works. And that was the sort of the piece, how it was developed. And this would be developed with the designer at the time. So you're sort of going backwards and forwards and trying things out. And they would say, okay, move this and change that and move those things around. So it's sort of showing work in context. And then those two pieces were for magazines, but also it's like showing how you can move away from sort of what you would normally work with, and also being open to being able to work in other areas. So the next three pieces were all for an exhibition. So these are very big. So these are about 2 meters high. And these were all commissioned for a project about refugees in Vilnius. So each one of these was an individual story. And I was given all the imagery to work with, and then assembled these from those images. And it was sort of trying to create portraits. And when I was approached to do this, they said, oh, we really like what you do, because you're showing places, but all incorporating other things into it. So all these were sort of developed. And there was about 10 or 12 of these, and they were all developed in lots of different ways. It was, in one way, it's very hard to work with other people's material, but also at the same time, trying to sort of respect the individual people, because this was not a commercial one. This was an exhibition about these people. So all of these were sort of developed, and this is the final outcome. So again, it's showing the work in context, because it's very easy to sort of show these as pictures, but they are designs. They're designs to be with text to be incorporated. So it's quite important sometimes to show them what they are and how they work as a design, particularly when you're working as an illustrator in these cases. So these were all actually how they were ended up, and they ended up going around sort of various museums around Europe. These are not my photographs; these were taken by the people that actually took them. So, and then they also ended up in print as well. So it's trying to show lots of different ways of how work can be shown in different ways. So, and then this sort of led, there's also diversity of approach. So a lot of my work was very textual based and very using lots of photographs and lots of textures. But commissions sometimes come along where you're sort of confronted with a lot of different approach. And this was for a series of banners in a conference, and these were commissioned by a software company that we'd done quite a lot of work with. So it was a very different commission than I would normally work with. But I thought sometimes it's quite good to share things that you wouldn't normally get approached to do. So again, it's about showing diversity or approach and different ways of working. So these were quite big. These were banners again that ended up in a conference center, so they were printed out and quite big. But one thing that I always like with a portfolio, and I always with my teaching, what I encourage my students to do when they're sort of going off and they're trying to build a portfolio, I always say to them, sort of end with something that's quite unique, that's sort of diverse away from what you would normally do. So you're giving a little bit of flavor, and it's sort of sometimes giving people a little bit more. So what I'm going to finish with is sort of the illustration work developed into motion graphics work. It was a sort of a logical development for me to sort of move away from still image and start using moving image. And it's also part of my teaching now, is doing a lot of motion graphics. So a lot of the process ended up in, and I'm not going to play the sound on this, but a lot of the processes that I've used in graphic design has ended up using motion graphics. Because with motion graphics, we're not making films, we're making moving images. So those ideas of bringing all those things together, of manipulating lots of imageries and using collage in lots of different ways, and then bringing that together, sort of fed into this motion graphics. And we did quite a lot of work with this company creating motion graphics in different ways. But just a sort of finish, I think a good portfolio builds a story, builds a series of connections between each individual piece of work. And all of the work that I've shown, it spans about 10 years probably, or probably more, but it's trying to put, as Clive said right at the beginning, is try to make a snapshot of who you are and what you do, and also give a few surprises along the way. So that's what I wanted to say, and that's what I wanted to show. Thanks.
Wow, brilliant.
Fantastic. This is stunning, having 4 very different kind of approach, like from different disciplinary backgrounds, different kind of pathways and portfolios, but very clearly for me, you can see the principles, that all of you actually covered. So I don't know, for me, that was really about showing context and process, the thinking behind it, not just the final destination, as John said, but also that there are different portfolios. You do them for different audiences, or in different, in different ways, for an interview, or if you send it off and someone's looking through it individually, for example, right? So, or online. So that was really interesting too, but also what to include. So all of you, I think, have said about, show your best work, show yourself, but also be honest, tell what you've learned, what the skills were. So, emphasizing your skills and what challenges you mastered, kind of. I think that was something all of you kind of covered on as well. And then, of course, the last thing is the standing out, taking risks, being a bit bold. And use the storytelling to tell a little bit about yourself. I could see that in all 4 of you, I have to say. So, well, that was just for me. It was pretty amazing. Thank you so much. And I'd love to open the floor for questions from everyone, please. Just shoot. Any question is a good question. I'm sure everyone is having questions, like Alex, for example, or others. Go ahead. Please ask. Use the chat or just speak up.
Yeah.
Happy to, yeah, anything. Okay, SK. Would you like to unmute and speak up?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, all good.
Yes, hello. Good evening. Right there. Yeah, it's been very informative, and thank you guys for all that. The one thing I wanted to know is kind of where do you get started? I know it seems like a very vague question, but I feel like as somebody who's doing, I'm near the end of my degree now. I've only got one more year left after this year. And I really want to get into this and maybe be freelance or something like that, but I'm not sure. And I just don't know where to start with my portfolio in a way. Do you think going with charities and trying to do things like that, or using just your OU work and things, or what would be a good way to sort of start your portfolio is my main question.
Okay, yeah, good question. The what is your field or your interest?
I have many. That's another problem.
Yeah,
which is maybe a good thing but a bad thing at the same time.
Yeah,
because I was originally, when I started doing this, I wanted to go into more like product design and things like that. And I'm very much into environmentalism and sustainability. And I didn't know if I wanted to work more in sort of like eco design and stuff like that. But recently I have done more things at my current job, which is more like customer experiences and UX sort of design. So I don't know whether to maybe go towards sort of that field. So I'm a bit in between at the minute as to what to go with, if you know what I mean.
Here's a tip.
To focus.
Here's a tip. This is advice I give to students. Similar, you know, they're finished their course, they're looking for jobs. You know, they've done their degree and they're looking for. So this is the tip: is what you may, team, all of you out there, maybe getting a perception is that it's kind of there is just the portfolio. Not quite right. Is actually what students and professional designers do, and Laura kind of hinted at it, is that you tailor your portfolio for a particular target. So a way into this one, in your case, might be to look at the kind of jobs you're interested in and see what the person's spec for that job is, read it and think, okay, I've had experience of that, and that, I can do that, and then construct a portfolio against that job description. So in effect, you're tailoring what you can already do with things that you've already done towards a particular end, is meeting the requirements, I think, because the job of the portfolio in that instance is to get an interview.
Yeah.
So
a bit like a CV then, basically.
Yeah. And once you've got an interview, as Laura's kind of intimated, you're kind of in, because then you can talk and then you can expand. So the key thing, I think, is tailor the portfolio like you would a CV or an introductory letter to a very specific target, and you've got a good chance of hitting it. But others,
thank you.
You know,
I'll just chip in there. I think when I started as an illustrator, it's always the difficulty is always how do you get work? And what I started to do is I just I found articles in magazines that had illustrations in them, and I just did my illustration and put that in. So sometimes if what you could do is you can find an existing design and you design it in the way that you want to do it, and you put that in your portfolio. It's sort of copying. You're copying the content, but you're creating an interpretation of it in your way, because they can, anybody that's looking at it that's going to commission you to do something, they can see that, okay, she understands all these things and how it works, and then they'll take a risk with you. But always getting that first step is the most difficult one. But copying something is sometimes quite a good way of doing it. It's not plagiarism, because it will be yours in some form.
Yeah. No, I understand that. No, that's a good tip as well. Thank you very much for this. I'm just writing everything down. Thank you. No, that's great. Excellent. Thank you, guys.
A similar question from Andrew, but maybe you can still talk around, because Andrew has asked about would you recommend tailoring your portfolio towards a job? So in a way you've answered that, don't you? But is there anything else to say towards that?
I think what you've got to do, you've got to spike the interest of the person that's opening that portfolio. So if you're applying for a role in a company where it's very much into advertising and marketing fish and eggs, if you don't like fish and eggs and you don't want to do stuff like that, then don't apply. But if you're going to apply, make sure that you're knocking on the door of that person who's opened that portfolio, because you want to pique their interest. So it's got to be something that's focused.
Yeah.
We say it all the time about CVs, don't we? You focus your CV on the job. Don't just run off something that's bland. Focus it towards the job. And it's a very similar thing with portfolios.
So,
Yeah.
sorry, Mike.
Yeah, you have you have
just
to
to
do
jump
your
in on-
sorry, go on.
Just to jump in on what John was saying, obviously I picked up on your example of the portfolio of including things like CAD models and 3D renderings. So if, for instance, you were trying to apply for a job that, as you're saying, sells eggs and fish or whatever it was, that you would try and tailor your skills representation of CAD models and 3D rendering towards that company. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, you know, if you're into CAD models and 3D rendering, you may not be going to the right company that's dealing with fish and eggs. But,
yeah.
that may be just a marketing job, so that the skills that would be very different. But if you're looking at 3D rendering and models and things like that, then it's likely that you're going to be going to work for a furniture design company or an engineering design company or some other company that leans on 3D modeling and rendering. So it's kind of that way round, not the other.
Okay.
Yeah, in that context, Andrew, Mike was saying, I think we live in fantastic times. Mike, John, I can't remember, is that the tools that we now have are just, staggering. And where a lot of my former design students across a variety of disciplines are finding work actually are in the kind of creative media industries, film, stage, where so often now, instead of kind of carpenters knocking together sets in the physical environment, a lot of it's all kind of green screen and CAD modeling. And so that idea of the traditional outfit that produces CAD designers who are calculating complex equations or modeling real structures, those skills are equally desirable in a world in which you're constructing for a film, whole cities and environments. So, yeah, I think the potential to look beyond kind of perhaps, the orthodox world of engineering. I used to be a former engineer, so I'm not decrying engineering. I'm just saying that, it looks like we're entering a world in which the scope for employment is getting bigger and bigger all the time.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say, following on from Clive, that if you're in year one of your degree program, by the time you exit that degree program, there will be jobs that exist at that point. They never existed when you started your degree. So think in terms of totally flex on this, because Mike has hinted on it. He started out in one direction and went zooming off in another electronic direction. And we can think of that on steroids in these times, because with the advent of AI systems, then it's all changing again. So, be flexible.
That's going to come in. Yeah. We have another question from Siri. Do you want to ask it yourself, or should I read out? I don't know. Do you have a microphone?
I can ask.
Hear from you.
I can ask it myself. And by the way, it's pronounced Kerry.
I'm so sorry, Kerry.
It's all right. It's the spelling that always catches people out. I wish to specialise in graphic design. And at the moment, I make covers for my own fiction books, and I use other people's pictures in them to make my own design from things like deposit photos in Pixabay. can I use those images that I have made from other people's images in my portfolio? Or do they have to be from scratch from me?
I think if you're not putting them into, if you're just using them as examples of what you do, then yes. But what you are doing is if you get commissioned, then you would have to work out a way of what images would you use if you were commissioned to do something, if you see what I mean. And generally it's a better habit to create your own imagery, and there is lots of stock sites out there that you can use that don't cost a lot of money, are now free. So it depends on the images that you're using. I mean, it is difficult to find authors and source images on particular things. But I think to answer the question, if you're putting them in your portfolio and you're not using them for commercial reasons, then generally that's okay. But I would try to wean yourself off doing it personally. I don't know if anybody else has got an opinion. It is a very personal thing of what you're doing.
Yeah, I go with you, Mike. I mean, one has to be careful. I mean, there are such things as Creative Commons licenses, attributions that some allow absolutely you can do anything you like. Others acknowledgements, some maybe have.
Yep, I'm always very cautious of that. I know Deposit Photos, it's unlimited for digital design, but when it goes into print, there's only a certain amount that can be put into print.
That's it. Yeah. And so I think I say a similar thing to students in U101 when they're looking for images to illustrate their problems, is that a good approach is to find something that you think represents what you're trying to say. And then Mike's view is, well, I'm not putting words into his mouth, but I'm interpreting it, is adapt it for yourself, create your own version of it, and then the kind of problem more or less goes away. So and it's not always possible, but I think Mike's pretty much on the money, is try and wean yourself off this, because a reliance on other people's work it's kind of a vote of no confidence in your own creative capacities to some degree, I think. So yeah. I
think sometimes it depends on the context of what you're doing and what you're doing with it. There's lots of instances where people have ripped stuff off, and then it's perfectly acceptable and it becomes part of the cultural norm. And it also depends on how much you're manipulating it. And I was having an interesting conversation with the other day, is that AI is going to be a big problem in this, because what AI does is it manipulates pixels, and that's a separate argument. I don't think we want to go down here, but it will be a big problem. So it depends on how much the images that you've got are recognizable. But generally, make your own work, really. Make your own stuff as much as possible. That's the most important thing, and try to stay true to yourself and find something that is you, in your style, and that you enjoy doing and making. The one problem with using other people's work is it tends to filter and drop into sort of being other people's work and be generic and certain styles. So without seeing it, it's very difficult to sort of say, yes, you should be doing this or that or this. So
okay, thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, are there any, actually that filters into the next I wanted to mention, just before other questions come in here. Maybe we're over a little bit, but I hope we can, if there are more questions, still stay on. That we would like to offer some sessions, on feedback sessions on your pieces. So if you're interested, there's a little poll. I would love to understand, do you see that poll? First of all, do you think that was useful? And also, would you like to receive personalized feedback on your portfolio or a piece or something? Would that be something of interest? I'm really curious to know. Do you see the poll? Could you?
Yeah, we got the poll
respond?
Here.
Yeah, perfect. That would be lovely. I would really like to know.
Yeah, good.
And meanwhile, you can think about more questions. You can stay maybe 5 more minutes or so.
I was just going to say as well, Nicole, with regards to portfolio work, if the portfolio is only seen between you and perhaps a prospective employer, then we come back to Harvard referencing every time, because at the end of the day, you can acknowledge, and you should acknowledge, the work of others.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that applies to images and text.
Can I, in that context, John, Nick, this won't take long, a minute. Can I just share a project report? Because the project report is kind of a, it won't take long. We're not going to look at every page, but it will give you some sense, student, of exactly this idea of John's point about the journey and the destination. So I'll just share this thing for you.
There was an untitled question in there. I don't know how that got in there. Thanks for answering that one.
Yeah, okay, I'm just going to see if I can. Right, just bear with me. View full screen. There we go. So this is a piece of product design from a former Indian student of mine, actually, and he was more his thing is about, you know, burning issues of the day, sustainability, that kind of stuff. Actually, quite well. That's not scrolling there. I don't know. Let me just see if I can. There we are. I'm not entirely sure. Okay. Why is it not? Okay, here we are. Yeah. So this is a project that he did for his final major project. And it's an electronic consumer device. And this is the structure for typical major project reports. Introduction. I'm only going to whiz through it, so you get some sense of the difference between a project portfolio and, you know, a simple portfolio. So masses of research. His primary concern was trying to reduce electronic waste. You know, what happens to it. So here's a research activity on line research. This is, you know, perhaps good for T317 U101 students. The methodology is used, ethics, research methods, qualitative research versus quantitative research, as Laura's intimated. There we are, quantitative research. So it's a good balance between analysing and digesting statistical data and interpreting that data into images. You know, very often an image of a particular situation this creates a better impression than just raw numbers, e-waste. So here's this thing, set himself his own design brief, and this aligns with U101, in which you're asked to create problem statements, user processes, user research, understanding where this is used, scenarios and environments, mood boards to try and get some emotional sense of what this thing might feel, look like, form ideation, sketch work, brainstorming, which is of course collaborative, sustainable ideation, and here's kind of prototyping in action with simple cardboard mock-ups, exactly the same kind of stuff we get in U101. And this is more kind of John's field, understanding what happens inside this object, aesthetics, technologies, fits and finishes, ideations. And then this idea of contextual learning and supervised learning. And then how this device might be used to provide other sensory inputs, as well as just kind of looking at the thing on the screen, holographic projections, and then CAD modeling, and then internal constructions, analysis of form, and then high quality CAD renderings that show what the thing is like, and visualizations that, you know, could be said to drop into this category of hero shots, that you see that, and this contrast between kind of primarily white pages through to dramatic images set on black pages, beauty with brains, and then a massive leap with the pro camera system. So the whole thing is modular, and this has the capacity to view images in infrared, and it can construct a world of augmented reality simply by pointing at the stuff. So mixed reality, you can use projection systems, selfies, and waterproof, the whole shooting match, and then dismantleable, recyclable, modular, upgradable, and more kind of emotional type images that just kind of capture the imagination. And then a research reflection that winds the whole thing up. So that's, in many ways, that's a kind of an illustration of John's point, is the journey. Behind the final thing, there's a whole journey that's been documented to explain and add credibility. Yeah, I can do this thing. And it's not just I'm interested in aesthetics and form, I can CAD the hell out of anything. There's a ton of really intelligent research that documents how we actually got to that solution.
How long did they spend on this project, Clive?
That's 3 months. Yeah.
3 months and a team of?
1. Yeah. So
this was the other one. No.
Yeah, each student conducts their own project independently, but what they do during it is, things like at the prototyping stage, they all ask each other, can you be my tester for this? And, so that, but largely speaking, it's an independent project, but they collaborate where necessary to develop concepts and test them out.
Impressive. Oh, I'm vanishing on the screen here. Hello, still here. So I was wondering, are there any more questions that you'd like to ask?
I'm just scrolling down here. I'm just catching up with the questions.
Yeah, Andrew had another one, maybe. And
Jamie,
yeah.
You were saying, Clive, did you make a prototype? Do you mean did the student? Oh, I didn't. It's not my project. It's one of my students' project. Yeah, student did make a prototype. Yeah. Yeah.
So Andrew had a question about portfolios for internal promotion and external job application.
Yeah.
I have one more question before you go, Ian, and everyone else, just in case. How did you hear about this session? Please, before you go, let me know.
You told me,
I'd
Nick.
like to know how to. Then tick other.
Nick said, be there.
Tick other.
Be there or die. Yeah, okay.
Okay, can we come back to Andrew's internal job promotion or external job application?
I think Theo's done a good job of answering my question. Although if anybody does feel like they'd like to weigh in, then more than welcome. Just sort of looking at the fact that not everybody doing this degree, myself included, will be aiming towards starting a career in design or potentially development. So I'm in the field at a fairly junior grade at the moment, and so I'm doing this degree to try and give myself some weighting to start moving up the ranks. So I feel like there may be a slightly different view towards a portfolio for the purposes of internal promotion as opposed to starting a brand new career.
It's a really good question. Here's it. I don't know if any of you are aware, or you may or may not be, about this next bit of news. Is quite a few years ago, I think about 2016-ish, IBM made a massive internationalized campaign to recruit product designers, not because they wanted to design laptops or workstations or screens. The reason they wanted to design product designers, to employ product designers, was because the way they think, a bit like U101, is the process of becoming a product designer is the process of understanding people, understanding needs, understanding markets, understanding technologies, communicating with others across disciplines. The stuff, and it goes with other disciplines as well, the stuff that they have to do is kind of staggering. And that's what we need. We need, if we're going to continue to innovate, we need that kind of mentality. It's highly adaptable, highly configurable mind that is highly tolerant of uncertainty and is capable of coming up with eccentric ideas and are not frightened of failure. But some of this ring true from you 101. And I think internally the same thing applies. You know, if internal departments and managers can see and come across evidence of someone who has something of that, then it's going to go down well, because you can apply it anywhere, really. You know, once you've got a creative mindset, you see the opportunities to manifest it kind of wherever you go. It's a bit like the Bauhaus concept of design. It translates as total work of art. If you can design the building, then you should be able to design all the elements that are within it, right down to the door handles. Gesamtkunstwerk, I think, total work of art. So yeah, creativity, mate. It's great stuff, isn't it? He said.
That's really interesting, Clive. Definitely feel like a mindset can be as big a selling point as a set of work.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. And the brilliant thing is, Laura has touched on this, like if you get in front of someone in an interview, in many ways, the job is yours to lose, because someone's already seen it. They say, God, Andrew, yeah, let's get him on board. And nothing enthuses people like other people's enthusiasm. Yeah, so once you're in there, you just kind of knock them dead with your receptivity, your open-mindedness, and your enthusiasm. And yeah, you sit back and take a 20 grand pay rise and say, I owe all of that to...
If only.
Okay, 15. But yeah, you kind of go, oh yeah, I remember that portfolio session, all those wise people talking, except Clive, he talks out his ass. But yeah, there you go, mate. Good luck.
Thanks.
Fantastic. Okay, we are a little bit over the hour, but I'd really like to thank you, everyone. That was great. Good questions as well. We'll be sending around an email with the recording, link to the recording, and also an opportunity to actually talk to any of the designers who presented their work today, to get some feedback on your portfolio if you want to. So that's the next part, and we will email you about that you can sign up to get some personalized feedback on your portfolio if you like to. Okay, so with that, I thank you very, very, very much. I very much enjoyed this session. I hope everyone did too. And yeah, hope to do this again. I just say. Yeah.
Well done, Nick. Yeah. Can I just say, Laura, John, Mike, bloody brilliant work.
Yeah.
Sick with jealousy.
Definitely.
Yeah,
yeah,
great.
Really impressive.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
Brilliant.
haven't got to see your third project, Laura. Next session. Here we go.
Thank you,
Here we
everyone.
go.
Brilliant.
Thanks, everyone, for coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Da, 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 da. Yeah, great one, Nick. Well done.
Stop recording. I didn't do anything.
Yeah, did you? You
You
really
did all of
organised the
that.
whole thing, you know. Yeah, great.
It was a super session, Nick.